Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. Here's your flash briefing for the week of January 8th. City Council will meet for regular session Tuesday night at 6 in Council Chambers in City Hall. If you can't watch, quickly catch up on the City Council meetings by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter. It breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityofls.net. Stay weather aware this weekly summit. Do so by signing up for the city's free alert system, LS Aware. Receive emergency and non-emergency information by text, email, or phone, such as snow updates and road closures. You choose how you want to be notified. Learn how to sign up on the city's website. The city is hiring. Join our team at the City of Lee Summit. The city offers rewarding career opportunities, a positive environment, and fantastic benefits. View these opportunities at lspeople.net. And stay connected with the city. We have several email newsletters to keep you informed about everything going on in Lee Summit. The Council Debrief recaps city council meetings. The city portal has the latest news and information about the city. And the flyover is your one-stop shop for airport news. You can subscribe to all of these on the city's website. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
Welcome to the Lee Summit Sign Department. We are going to walk you through our process from start to finish. We make signs as needed here. It's not like we just go out into the field and place a speed limit sign here, no parking here. Our traffic engineers, they go through and they'll do field studies. They'll send us down an engineering work order for us to go out, place new signs or remove signs as needed. Coming from the material, our blanks come in and they're just aluminum blanks. We can put our white, our red, our fluorescent yellow, green, whatever. And basically what it looks like is just that there. Throw it up into the roller. And once we got it covered, take it to our work table here, and Tim will cut the corners, cut all the access off to where it's lined up right. As far as the plotter and the software that we use, there's a street name sign there, and he's gonna go ahead and print that out on the plotter so you can see the plotter and how it operates and runs. There's standards for the height, even just on letters on the sign blank. Basically what we have on the computer there is it's pretty much set up to those. And it goes through, it's got a very small but sharp needle that goes through and cuts everything out letter by letter. Once that's done cutting, our next stage would be bringing it over here. Currently picking out the sign letters right now. We call it weeding or picking or however you want to call it. Next, putting it on the transfer tape. Then after it's taped, we bring it over to the roller. That's where we apply it to the actual sign blank. And we'll roll it through one time just to get the air bubbles out. And the last stage is basically just taking the transfer tape off the front of it. And there's a finished product of the street name sign. We'll take you out to the field and show you our process that we go through. We're going to go out and follow our sign guys and get something installed for you. This is where we check our underground utilities. Tim, you got AT&T?
AT&T's back here.
Evergy, Google, so we should be good to go. We normally put all of our stuff together out in the field. Then once the base is installed, we'll go ahead and put the post in there. These come up too. Perfect. And that's how we do it. Simple, quick.
This month's Council Member Spotlight is all about Mayor Bill Baird. Check it out.
I have always volunteered in the community and I was always really involved, but then I ran for school board. Whenever I got done with my term, I just felt like I had more to give. It's always been my goal from day one is to get everyone in the community connected and working together, and I always called it a spirit of community. Well, Mayor's 24/7 and I have a job. I've had to work really hard at compartmentalizing, is what I call it. So during this time, I'm going to do work. During this time, I'm going to be mayor, even though I can get a call at any moment about mayor stuff. And so I've had to even work that much harder at setting aside time for myself or for family. So I like to exercise, I like to work out. Hillary's my wife. She actually goes to work out with me as well. And we do like to go downtown to the shops. We make sure we maximize our time together. I mean, I've got 2 kids as well, and we spend a lot of time with them, or whatever time they will give us these days. And I have a dog. I think most people kind of know me know I have to have a dog. We have so much development going on, and we're growing fairly quickly, so we have a lot of infrastructure needs, and sometimes we have gaps in infrastructure, and we've always managed to get by, but with this kind of growth, we're really having to be creative and look at our options and just have a good plan for water, sewer, roads, and more. If we want to grow the most healthy way, we need a diverse economy. We do have a lot of retail that's opened up here, and there's been new construction for retail. We really need to focus in the future on bringing some, well-paying jobs here, good, strong employers that want to be located in this incredible community of now 101,000 people. A lot of our workforce does commute to work still, so they leave Lee Summit to go to work, and it'd be nice if we could keep some of those citizens right here in our community. The times I feel most proud are actually when I'm in the community and I see the community come together.
We have Buddy in the house. Mr. Mayor!
The tree lighting is always very fun. I always feel very proud. It's just a great warm feeling. The same thing goes for when the council will do something and we come together and make a good decision together. There's been a few of those that you go home feeling like a winner. And one of them was when we put together the downtown farmers market, when we bought the land, and it became real, all that hard work. But also the Diversity and Inclusion Commission, that was months and months of discussions and conversations that were really hard to have, and we went ahead and moved forward and as a council all together, and I was very, very proud of that. And there are a few things that the citizens have done that have really helped us tremendously. First, in the middle of a pandemic, they passed a use tax, which is a way for us to collect sales tax whenever someone purchases online. That helps shore up our revenues so that we can continue to provide as high quality services that our city provides. And it helps us take care of our employees, it helps us with our public safety and more. So I can't be more thankful to the citizens for that. Lee Summit has the opportunity to have a major impact on the economy in the Kansas City area. We already, as an economy, are rolling along with such a high median income. We have an amazing workforce here that are paying taxes, they're paying property taxes, they're paying sales taxes, they're keeping our economy rolling, and we really are getting the attention of all our neighbors. And I think that what's going to happen is you're going to see the opportunity for us to really get everybody's attention when businesses start moving here, bigger businesses and more so. You should try to find a way to give back to the community, whether it's at the city level, citizen committees, or just participating in some of our community conversations whenever we have those opportunities. It's worth coming out of your shell or taking that leap of faith and just showing up and saying, what can I do or how can I help? The more that we do this together, the more wonderful the community is.
Thanks for watching the Lee Summit Rundown. I'm Laura Ingeman. See you next time.
Call to order the Public Works Committee meeting for Monday, January 8th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro,
Here.
Vice Chair Edson, showing absent at the moment. Councilmember Lovell,
Here.
Councilmember Pryor.
Here.
Thank you, and Councilmember Edson will be joining with Zoom here in a second. First up is the approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion.
Chair.
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Next up, public comments. Anybody know of any public comments? Okay. We'll move right along. First item of business is the approval of the December 11th, 2023 Public Works Committee action letter. Looking for a motion.
Chair, I move to approve the December 11th, 2023 Public Works Committee action letter.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Lovell, a second by Councilmember Pryor to approve the December 11th, 2023 Public Works Committee action letter. And roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Chair,
Yes.
I just want you to know that I'm here now.
Okay, we've just approved or just asked to approve, voted on the action letter of December 11th, if you would like to approve that with us.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, TMP 2870, an ordinance approving the award of RFP 2024-041 to A1 Sewer and Septic Service for stormwater infrastructure CCTV inspection for a one-year term with 4 possible one-year renewal options, and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same. Mr. Persing.
Evening, Council. John Persing, Staff Engineer, Public Works. This contract is for stormwater infrastructure CCTV inspection. This will be mostly in support of our CMP rehab project. It's a 2017 sales tax project. Allow us to go out and inspect pipes and find our worst problems so we can put our money to the best use. So, if you have any questions?
Councilmember Edson, you have any questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Pretty straightforward, John. Yep, I'll just look for a motion. Councilmember Lovell.
I move to recommend to City Council.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Lovell, a second by Councilmember Pryor, moving TMP 2870 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
4 ayes. Unanimous. Next up, TMP 2873, an ordinance authorizing the execution of an agreement by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Walter P. Moore and Associates, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $558,875 for professional engineering services for Ward Road improvements from O'Brien Road to Tripman Road, and authorizing the city manager to enter. Allison.
Hi, Karen Allison, Senior Staff Engineer. This is the design contract for the Ward Road Phase 2 Improvement Project. The primary purpose of this project is to enhance safety and operations along approximately 1/2 mile of Ward Road between O'Brien Road and Shipman Road. This project will reconstruct 2-lane roadway and will include installation of bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides, street lighting, curb and enclosed stormwater drains, and replacement of some of the existing water main. This is the second of 2 phases for the planned improvements to Ward Road. The first phase extends from Blue Parkway to O'Brien Road, and it is currently in design. We are requesting to enter a sole source agreement with Walter P. Moore and Associates. They were previously selected for the engineering services for Phase 1 of this project. Some survey and design work performed for Phase 1 is applicable to this Phase 2, especially where the two phases meet at the intersection of O'Brien Road. Walter P. Moore has unique knowledge of the project area and access to data that will benefit the design of Phase 2.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the council? Sounds like an exciting project. It's been needed for a long time, yeah. Councilmember Edson, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I'll look for a motion then.
Chair.
Councilmember Pryor.
Yep. I move to advance to council for approval, TMP 2873, an ordinance authorizing the execution of an agreement by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Walter P. Moore and Associates, Inc., in an amount not to exceed $558,875 for professional engineering services for Ward Road improvements from O'Brien Road to Chipman Road, and authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Councilmember Pryor, a second by Councilmember Lovell, moving TMP 2873 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro.
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
That's a unanimous vote. Next up, TMP 2883, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a memorandum of agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri, the Federal Highway Administration, and Missouri State Historic Preservation Officer related to the mitigation of adverse effects of the public improvement project designated as Federal Project Number STBG-3001-009, M291 North Interchange with US 50 within the city limits of Lee Summit, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor to execute the same. Kohler.
Craig Kohler, Senior Staff Engineer. Due to the federal funding being involved in the 291 project, basically we have to follow the National Environmental Policy Act, and part of that process is concurrence and compliance by the State Historic Preservation Office of Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act. Olson, our consultant, supplied SHPO with evaluations of property in the footprint of the project, and basically SHPO has determined that the Highway Patrol Complex is eligible to be on the National Register of Historic Places, and due to us moving Blue Parkway through the buildings over there and having to demo those 3 buildings, so now we have to have this MOA, and we're going to have to take pictures and document everything in order to get to be able to bid the project. So if you got any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Would the Missouri State Historic Preservation Office, do they retain all the records, or are they held somewhere else for archives?
I think they keep them all. Well, I think more than them, I think the Federal Highway Department keeps some of them too.
That's just mainly as
It's going to be pictures. It has to be a certified person that does these kind of pictures, that's approved by the Historic Society and things like that. So,
memorializing
the building.
Any
Such a beautiful place.
other questions?
Hey, Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Edson.
Thank you. So there isn't a chance that they're going to come back and want to save any part of that, is there? Or do we know yet?
Not that I know of. I don't think they can. As long as we do everything that's stated in that MOA, I think we're good to go.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kohler. I'd look for an motion.
Chair.
Councilmember Lovell.
I move to recommend to City Council approval of agenda item number TMP 2883, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a memorandum of agreement between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri, the Federal Highway Administration, and the Missouri State Historic Preservation Officer related to the mitigation of adverse effects of the public improvement project designated as federal project number STBG-3001009, M291 North Interchange with US 50 within the city limits of Lee Summit, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor to execute the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Lovell, a second by Councilmember Pryor, moving TMP 2883 to the full council with recommendation of approval. Comments? No discussion. Roll call, please.
Chairman DeMoro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
4 ayes, moving TMP 2883 to the full council. Recommendation of approval. Next up, TMP 2891, an ordinance authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement for transit services and management of Oates contract and vehicles by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri, and the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, and commitment of Federal Transit Administration Section 5307 formula funds to the KCAT for transit services and capital expenses, and authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for the same. Ms. Berry.
Good evening. I'm here to request approval of the agreement between KCATA and the City of Lee Summit. This is for our fixed route commuter service, so that's going to be the trains to the buses to downtown Kansas City. No change in the schedule. The schedule of those will remain the same. That's 2 trips in the morning with 1 reverse, and then 2 trips in the evening with 1 reverse commute. I was before you in November doing a presentation. The expected amount of this contract is $48,910, and basically the KCATA has agreed to 2 renewals. So, any questions?
2 renewals, yearly renewals?
Yes,
Okay.
so this year, and then 2 additional years for a total of 3 years. They just have some uncertainty. They don't want to go out to our standard 4 renewals just because the uncertainty of costs. And their costs have gone up, trying to get staff, having to pay drivers more, benefits, all of that has increased. The price of maintaining vehicles has gone up, so that's necessitated some increases in price.
And if I remember your presentation in November correctly, the ridership has sort of stabilized at one. I mean, I knew it had fallen, but it's
Correct. It did drop
stabilizing.
during COVID, but it has started going back up again. And we'll just continue to monitor the ridership to see if we ever need to change the number of buses each day.
Any other questions?
Chair,
Councilmember Pryor.
I move to advance to council for approval TMP 2891, an ordinance authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement for transit services and management of Oates contract and vehicles by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri, and the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority, KCATA, and commitment of Federal Transit Administration Section 5307 formula funds to the KCATA for transit services and capital expenses, and authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Pryor, a second by Councilmember Lovell, moving TMP 2891 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Seeing no discussion, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMoro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Vote is unanimous. Next up, TMP 2892, an ordinance authorizing the approval of Amendment 1 to the Transportation Service Agreement with Oates by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Oates, and authorizing city manager to execute the same. Ms. Berry again.
Good evening, Susan Berry, City Traffic Engineer. So this is an amendment to our Oates agreement. Our original Oates agreement had no limit on the number of renewals, but due to the change in some significant parts of the contract, we had to enter into an amendment. So those include the fare increases from $1.50 a trip to $3 a trip. This falls in line with some of the other on-demand services that are provided in Kansas City by KCATA, so we feel like that's in line. The fare has been $1.50 for quite some time, and is increasing the fare to $3 will help cover some of the increased expenses that Oates is seeing. Additional observed holidays include Juneteenth, Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day, Veterans Day, and Christmas Eve. Again, all of this trying to help attract and retain staff, drivers for Oates, and they're being able to pay their people and, attract good talent. And then the final is an increase to $68 an hour for operating costs. Previously, that was $40. It's a fairly significant cost. Some of that covers salaries, some of that covers delayed maintenance on the vehicles that they're seeing. And so overall, we'll get this amendment, and then moving forward, we can reevaluate the hourly cost every year. There's unlimited renewals.
Questions?
Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Edson.
how are we going to let people know of the increase in cost?
So both KCATA and Oates has already started having these conversations. From our point of view, we will put it on our website, but Oates has already, as soon as we get your approval at this meeting, we will put it out as a proposed increased fare. Before it has council approval, we can't call it a fare increase. And so we'll start, as Oates starts taking reservations for future trips, they will tell people of the fare increase. Right now, the fare increase would go into effect February 1. And then KCATA is involved in pushing out that message as well. So both agencies plus Lee Summit will work together to get the message out on the fare increase.
Okay, thank you. That's while it doesn't seem like a large increase, we're doubling the fare, and these are, I just wonder if we're doubling it on people who are already having enough of a hard time.
Well, and I've had that conversation with the head of Oates, and she said they get complaints about the fare now being $1.50. People just assume it should be free. So I think no one's happy paying anything, but it is in the ballpark of what other ride shares are offering, and quite a bit less than an Uber would be.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, I move to recommend to City Council approval of agenda item number TMP 2892, an ordinance authorizing the approval of Amendment 1 to the Transportation Service Agreement with Oates by and between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Oates, and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Lovell, a second by Councilmember Pryor, moving TMP 2892 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro,
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson,
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell,
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
4 ayes, unanimous vote. Next up, TMP 2889, an ordinance approving change order number 2 to the agreement with Infrastructure Solutions LLC for the McClendon Ditch Sewer Improvements Project, project number 425, between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Infrastructure Solutions LLC for an increase of $127,238.20 for a revised agreement price of $6,478,088.20, and to increase the project timeline by 85 calendar days, and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same. Mr.
I am not Perry Allen.
F. Thorne.
Jeff Thorne, Deputy Director, Water Utilities. Perry's unable to be here this evening, so I'm handling this one for him. This change order has to do with the elevation of rock underneath Highway 50. The majority of this change order got to do with the bore that we're currently working on under 50. Get across over towards Executive Way for the McClendon Ditch project. We did borings and put things together. What they found as they traveled underneath the highway was different than what's on either side. Boring machines work really well if they're all in soil or all in rock. If they're in some combination of the two, they tend to come off course, and that's what they've had going on. The bore itself got to a spot where it was facing a split face of material of soil and rock and began to climb and come offline. They have to change the technology to fix that, and that's what they proposed. And it's also going back and starting kind of again to get it going. So they've been out there getting ready to do all that. That's what this cost is tied to, and that's what we're dealing with today.
I'd look for a motion. Pryor.
Thank you. I move to advance to council for approval TMP 2889, an ordinance approving change order number 2 to the agreement with Infrastructure Solutions LLC for the McClendon Ditch Sewer Improvements Project number 425 between the City of Lee Summit, Missouri and Infrastructure Solutions LLC for an increase of $127,238.20 for a revised agreement price of $6,478,088.20 and to increase the project timeline by 85 calendar days and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Pryor, a second by Councilmember Level, moving TMP 2889 to the full council with a recommendation of approval. Seeing no discussion, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMoro.
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
And that vote is unanimous. Next up, TMP 2893, an ordinance approving change order number 3 to the agreement with Sands Construction LLC for the Sidewalk Gap Program FY23 project number 718 for an increase of $242,219.97 for a revised agreement amount of $2,292,211.20 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Evening, Erin Rolovo, Senior Traffic Engineer. This is the final change order for Phase 1 of the Sidewalk Gap Program. These are all final quantities, so this is just to wrap up the contract for this year, correct.
Questions? Member Level.
So this is just, like, was this something, like, what is the increase for? Like, just when we procured this, it's a third increase, is it?
So we had some overruns on driveway quantities. There were also some quantities that were not in the original contract that had to be added. So this is just kind of, once we had the final quantities on all of those, we're just wrapping that up and closing out everything so that we can make final payments.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions?
Chair, I move to recommend to City Council approval of agenda item number TMP 2893, an ordinance approving change order number 3 to the agreement with Sands Construction LLC for the Sidewalk Gap Program FY23 project number 718 for an increase of $242,219.97 for a revised agreement amount of $2,292,211.20 and authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement for the same.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Level, a second by Councilmember Pryor, moving TMP 2893 to full council with a recommendation of approval. Discussion, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMoro.
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Yeah, I heard you. I think Thank you. That's a unanimous vote. Moving on, TMP 2894, an ordinance approving change order number 1 to the contract with Scodeller's Construction, Inc. for the runway 1129 Taxiway Bravo and Taxiway Charlie reseal, joint seal, and remarking project for an increase of $146,127.36 for a revised contract price of $760,625.81 and authorizing the city manager to execute the same. Mr. Anderson.
Good afternoon, Mike Anderson, Deputy Director of Public Works Operations. Similar to Aaron's presentation, this one really is it's our final change order, wrapping up final quantities. The biggest bulk of this change order is on the partial depth pavement repair on Taxiway Bravo. That's by far the oldest piece of pavement we were working on out there and the most degraded at this point. When we got out there, we just found a lot more areas that needed to be repaired. We also knew that because of the amount of this contract, that because we were doing this rehab type project, that it would make any kind of reconstruction at Taxiway Bravo ineligible for about 10 years. So we wanted to make darn sure we took care of everything that was failing. So when we went out there, when we started chipping away at things, sometimes what you think is going to be 1 square foot ends up to be a couple. And we found some areas that weren't identified when the plans were originally put together. So really it was just making sure we got all the work done properly and just basic quantity overruns. So, and then I should mention too, I don't have it, normally I would run these things simultaneously, but this project is funded with a federal grant. And even with these changes, falls underneath the overall cap for that grant. So there will be a future grant amendment coming. Right now, MoDOT's, they're really short-staffed in their aviation section, so they're a little bit behind in getting some of the grants out. So when the grant is come out, we will have an amendment to cover this additional work as well.
So the MoDOT grant will cover the 242?
We'll cover 90% of it.
90% of it,
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said, in your comments, you said 10 years, we couldn't go back in after 10 years or until 10 years. Is that the life expectancy of these repairs?
Essentially, yes. I mean, we have a piece of pavement that's already pretty old. And I think it's probably at least 20 years old, and we're doing this work, and we would expect a 10-year life extension with this work.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. I'd entertain a motion.
Chair,
Councilmember Pryor.
I move 2894. I move to advance to council for approval TMP 2894, an ordinance approving change order number 1 to the contract with Scodeller and Scodeller Construction, Inc. for the runway 11 through 29 Taxiway Bravo and Taxiway Charlie reseal, joint seal, and remarking project, an increase of $146,127.36 for a revised contract price of $760,625.81 and authorizing the city manager to execute the same.
Second.
Thank you. That's a motion by Councilmember Pryor, a second by Councilmember Lovell, moving TMP 2894 to the full council for recommendation of approval. With recommendation of approval, any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairman DeMauro.
Aye.
Vice Chair Edson.
Aye.
Councilmember Lovell.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Thank you. That's a unanimous vote. Next up, item 2023-5991, a presentation of the Sidewalk Gap Program update. Ms. Rolavo.
Good evening. Again, my name is Erin Rolovo. I'm senior staff engineer with in Public Works, and I was the design project manager for the Sidewalk Gap program. So tonight, I'm going to kind of do a review of the program and what we did in phase 1. Just kind of go over the prioritization guidelines that we got from council before, and kind of give you an overview of the proposal for the next phase of the program. The CIP included $500,000 up to $1 million per year for 5 years. The CIP sales tax renewal of 2017 provided another $3.5 million for the sidewalk gap program, and $5 million came from the 2023 no tax increase bond issue. But there are over $20 million of gaps that have been identified in the city. So what are considered gaps for the purposes of this program? It's breaking continuous sidewalk, missing sidewalk in areas that typically have sidewalk, or the absence of sidewalk where required by standards. So the ones that were not considered for the purposes of this program are areas where the residential development is happening, because those segments typically go in as the homes are being built. Anything that's funded by a CIP program, so would be put in under a different project. Anything on an unimproved or interim road, we would not have considered with this program. Anything that would require reconstruction of storm or sewer, because we don't want to put in new sidewalk and have it ripped out by another project. And any apparent capital improvement project of much larger scale or scope. So we're kind of looking, for the purposes of this program, we're kind of looking at the low-hanging fruit, if you will, and also looking at the bigger picture of, are there other developments that would come in and potentially install this sidewalk or tear up this sidewalk after us. Our previous inventory was updated in 2021, but we've also continued to update it through residents reporting it in, saying, hey, why is this section of sidewalk missing? And then it gets added to our map for our project. Gaps exist in the absence of standard locations based on UDO requirements. We do limit it to the public streets. Again, citizen-reported gaps. And then there are some gaps that happen with new construction and we are reported to us through our inspectors and right-of-way staff. Our priority sidewalks, the gaps that we identified based on the priorities set forth by council in the past, there's 7.3 miles or 37,000 linear feet. This assumes, assuming a 5-foot wide sidewalk, that's 196,000 square feet of sidewalk, or square yards of sidewalk, excuse me, and an estimated 150 ADA ramps. So sidewalks were included as part of capital projects. The items that weren't also included are other sidewalks that were included in capital projects, ramps that were constructed with the curb program, sidewalk maintenance and small gaps that were installed by Public Works operations, not the CIP project. But Public Works recommended priority factors. The staff followed those priority factors for the first bid package. We identified locations that were the easiest, lowest hanging fruit. So areas that we felt didn't require a lot of design or utility movement, that sort of thing. We focused mainly on true gaps, where there's a segment of sidewalk on either side and we're just closing that gap, rather than segments of street that didn't have sidewalk along them at all. Those segments will be addressed later on in the project. Fiscal year 22-23 construction was $2.05 million and addressed 3.7 miles of sidewalk gaps. So this is a map that shows the segments that were completed during phase 1. You can see there's 22 areas where we addressed sidewalk gaps. Again, these were the lowest hanging fruit. They didn't require a whole lot, although we did run into some issues in the field that we hadn't necessarily anticipated. There was an extensive driveway replacement associated with this project. We replaced curb in a lot of areas because we're putting this sidewalk right at the back of curb, and the curb that it was tying into was not in good shape, so we had to tear that out and replace it. Sod replacement was significantly higher, and so we determined with the phase one of the project that more extensive engineering needs to be done on the front end of the project to kind of mitigate some of these things happening in the second one. So with our driveways, I learned that driveways are a lot steeper than you think they are. And just because you can tie into them does not mean that you should tie into them from the back of right-of-way. Any driveways with a slope greater than 4.3% should be replaced beyond the right-of-way. So we worked within an 11-foot, from the back of curb, 11 foot behind is typical city right-of-way. And our sidewalks, we like to have our sidewalks offset from the road by 5 feet, and then a 5-foot sidewalk. So there's 10 feet right there that we're using up. And that only leaves us another foot to tie into their original driveway. So we have many times we had to go beyond the right-of-way line in order to do that. So this picture on the on the left is a picture of a driveway that we tied in within that 1 foot. And you can see that it basically mirrors the curb at the front of the driveway and creates kind of an opportunity for a bumper scrape type situation. And so that's the kind of thing we were trying to avoid. So the other two pictures on the right-hand side of the slide show where we were able to get an agreement with the homeowners to go further back into their driveway and tie it in with a smooth transition so we don't have those bumps created. Utilities were another big issue for this project. We had water meters and sprinkler boxes that ended up in the sidewalk in some cases. The picture in the middle, we were going around a Google Fiber box as well as an overhead power line. And even if those things weren't in the way, we weren't sure we were going to be able to tie in for ADA purposes properly. So we ended up going up into the homeowner's yard a little bit further to go around that. And then the photo all the way to the right, we had to go around a storm box. And we had some grade issues. So you see there's a curb at the back of the sidewalk on that in order to tie in their yards properly. So yard grades was another big issue that we faced with this project. Most yards without sidewalk were graded to the back of the curb, and now we're taking 10 feet of that and pulling it back into their yard. So that can create some pretty big grade differences in some cases. There were several methods that we used to mitigate this. We had a 6-inch curb at the back of sidewalk. There were some with short retaining walls that we used. And then there was even one where we used a combination of adjusting the height of the sidewalk as well as I believe it was just curb on that one. So this is a couple of examples. The left one is just a curb at the back. You can see we tied it in and graded it out just a little bit. And then the one on the right is the one where we actually raised the sidewalk just a little bit in order to bring the height of the wall needed to mitigate that difference. And we graded it and sodded it. And then this is an example of a retaining wall. This couple had a neighborhood library in their yard, and originally it had stepping stones coming off of their driveway up to the library area. And as we were putting in the sidewalk, they told us that they actually had a neighbor who was in a wheelchair that came and accessed their library fairly regularly. So she was able to work with the contractor and actually have a concrete path put in as well at their cost. That was not at the city's cost. But that allowed better access for their little library users in that area as well. Things that we accomplished with this program is increased community connection. So working from left to right, we have connectivity to Miller J. Fields on 3rd Street, a connection to the Little Blue Trace Trail on Anderson Drive over to Lee Summit Road. And then this last picture is Emerald Drive up in the Oaks Ridge Meadows community up north. And they have a lot of school-aged children that walk to Voice Spears. And so now they have sidewalks to help them get there. Going forward, we're, like I said, the first project addressed as many of our low-hanging fruits as we could. Going forward, a lot of our missing segments have pretty substantial grade or utility conflicts that have to be worked through, and so they're going to take some more engineering on the front end. So the projects that will be upcoming will probably be much smaller in scale compared. This is just one example. It would take a 3 to 6 foot retaining wall in order to set back this slope enough for us to get the sidewalk in and meet ADA requirements. Here's another one where there are stairs where there should be an ADA ramp. So that's going to take some pretty significant, again, retaining walls and significant front-end engineering in order to figure those things out. The prioritization tiers were established previously by council. The factors were expanded and scaled, and for a variety of street classifications and various land uses. Factors were assigned for values of significance, and then Public Works agreed to these prioritizations, and at this time, staff is not recommending any changes. This is kind of a visual of the factors that were used. And the rating system that we use to identify those prioritized segments. So fiscal year 22-23 GAP program is completed. If you're in concurrence with not changing the prioritization, then we can move forward with the selection of the next phase of the project. We will be requiring additional field investigations, so we're actually having survey done right now for the next proposed phase of this project. Funding remained is $6,420,000 over the next 5 to 7 years, and we hope to have it out ready for bid in summer of 2024. This is a map that shows the remainder of those prioritized gaps. The ones shown in green are the areas that we plan to concentrate on for the next phase of the project. And then the areas in red are the ones that require significantly more engineering due to utility conflicts and right-of-way that may be needed and things of that nature. Right now, just a preliminary engineer's estimate shows that the next phase will be approximately $100,000. But that's without knowing quantities of retaining walls or the 6-inch curb at the back of sidewalk and things of that nature. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
The priorities, do you have street and intersections and things available? I mean, the map is a lot of red and green, and it's hard to tell exactly. I tried to blow it up. I've got the agenda up here, and it's still, I wasn't clear.
Sure. I mean, I don't have that with me as far as a zoned down version of the map, but I can get that information to you.
Yeah, Chairman DeMoro, we can put street names and define that list more so than that kind of large, we're a large city, so, to put it all in one slide, you're gonna omit that level of detail, but we can put that together. We wanted to make sure that, if there are desired changes to those factors and the weighting and how we prioritize, that we get that information first before we firm up this next phase of the sidewalk gap program. And if we got that confirmation, then that map's not going to substantially change. We'll get into some of the engineering and perhaps maybe we come back with that more granular detail to say, here's where that next bid phase is going to be before we bid it. If that would be your preference, we could do that.
That would give us a better view of.
And that would give you a better view and make some finer changes if you would prefer to make finer changes to that list before we actually advertise for that next phase.
Bid process goes out in June, you say?
We're kind of targeting, we're not sure how much engineering goes into this next phase, but we would like to have something this summer go out to bid. Yeah. Any other questions from council?
So in a lot of these, I see a lot of areas outside of downtown getting their sidewalk gaps fixed, but I know downtown is a different circumstance. Does, like the sidewalk gaps in downtown that also need like stormwater infrastructure and things like that, would something like that have to, if you were to do the sidewalks, would that stormwater infrastructure come out of that budget? Or is that just something you guys aren't ready to even do yet?
Some of them we are, I'll mention Olive and Orchard as another project. Douglas Street is a project. We're reconstructing the street, reconstructing all the stormwater improvements, and putting in sidewalks with those jobs. Or Ward Road that you heard earlier tonight with Phase 2 design. Sidewalks are going in, reconstruction, stormwater. Those are really comprehensive capital improvement projects. I think where you're referring to is where we don't have that project already on the capital improvement plan, but we would need to put in storm sewers to get the sidewalks. Right now, we don't have a funding mechanism for that, and I believe the city council will be taking up the stormwater utility discussion after the election, sometime in probably May. That could be a source for improving our stormwater system and in consideration of sidewalks, maybe pairing them up to make a shared project. That could be an opportunity.
Oh, okay, thank you. And then I know, just even on, but that's good to know. I didn't know that they could be paired up like that. But even like on Green Street, I had someone send me a picture of just a spot where there's no sidewalk. It's just grass. There's sidewalk all along Green Street. And then, I can't remember the other street there, but I can send you a picture. But yeah, do you just prefer us, if we get pictures of like sidewalk gaps, do you prefer us to send those on to you?
Yes, we would encourage you or your constituents, send those into Public Works, because that builds that list of priorities. And, if it fits within, it's close to Lee Summit High School, if you're talking about down south Green Street, where, even though there might not be the stormwater infrastructure, it could be okay if it's a really small gap and it's an easy one, doesn't take a lot of engineering, that we want to go ahead and do that, knowing that it could be 10 years, 20 years. We don't know when we would otherwise get in there. So, yeah, we're still building that list that residents send in all the time. They're like, hey, there's this sidewalk gap. All the homes have been built in our subdivision and this one wasn't addressed. Maybe it was next to common ground or something. And so we add that to the list, and then hopefully we come back to it once it fits our priority criteria that we're mutually agreeing to for our limited dollars that then we could tackle.
Okay, thank you very much.
Questions? Councilmember Edson, do you have a question or two?
I don't have any questions, but, I know we haven't closed the financial gap, but the 2023 bond issue really helped. Is really going to help us solve a lot more problems than what we would have without it. So I'm just grateful that the voters supported that. Thank you.
Well, that's a good, very, very good point. There's more funds available to actually close the sidewalk gap. All right, thank you. We'll look forward to the next, the continuing locations and everything.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to wrap that up, Chairman, so our feedback was no changes to the priorities. the prioritization formulas that we're using, and to come back perhaps with our preliminary bid package for discussion before we actually advertise. Would that be appropriate? Okay.
Give us the opportunity to take a closer look at,
Yes.
at the priorities. And
Okay.
yeah, the way we fit the grading system, good to you guys? Okay. All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, item 2023-6036, presentation and discussion of the FY 2025 Capital Improvement Plan kickoff. Mr. Binger.
Good evening, George Binger, City Engineer. This is like our annual kickoff presentation for the Capital Improvement Plan. This is, we're on FY '25. Now this is, this year it's the second presentation because in November we'd discussed some of the priorities and concepts related to incorporating the April no tax increase bond issue. So this is a little different, but this is our standard kickoff presentation that we normally have. So looking at FY '25, we're looking, it's just looking at an overview. We'll kind of talk through somehow how this is put together, the success factors, guidance from the strategic plans, and things of that nature. Just get a quick update on our CIP sales tax that we have from 2017. And then the bond issue projects, and then we'll look at some of the committed projects we have. We'll have like an illustrative table or project sequencing, and then kind of go through some of the, the process, prioritize, and how we work through that. So this is part of the idea on the CIP, understanding that it's both a planning document and a budget document. The 5-year is a planning document that will go through Planning Commission and be an amendment to the comprehensive plan. What we bring forward for fiscal year '25 is the actual budget document. So so the next year is actually part of the budget. So right now, the FY '24 is what's budgeted here, and that gives us the authorization to spend funds on these projects. You'll note that basically the main things we're looking at on the capital side, it's infrastructure. We typically, if it's in the CIP, if it's more than $75,000, we typically will include that in the capital improvement plan. And then that's where we look at, what we're required to do by state on the capital improvements. It's basically if it's owned by a governmental agency. That's kind of the key factor of what we roll into this plan. So looking at the approval process, I want to indicate the stars that you see in this presentation are basically where we have a touch point with the public or with council or this committee on making sure we're in the right going in the right direction, that we're supporting the policy goals of council. So we have some are required projects, and this would be an example of a bond issue project. It is a specific project on a ballot initiative that must be done. Things where we have grant related, like the airport receives a significant amount of grant money, and those projects have to be completed when we enter into that grant agreement. And sometimes they have interagency projects, an example being the 291 interchange, where we're working with MoDOT and Highway Patrol and others. So once those are committed, we keep rolling on those. Then we want to look at, sometimes we'll come forward with highly recommended projects. Now this is, it's always, projects that are underway. If we've started designing a project, we don't recommend stopping and moving that to somewhere else. Because when we start to resequence the CIP and resequence projects, there can be significant impacts on cost and schedule related to that. Also, when we talk about the CIP sales tax, that election did not have a specific list of projects on the ballot. It was basically a commitment when we did the education and information with the public and other public engagement. We said these are projects that we expect to be in the program. So we, the policy guidance we've had thus far and have continued to support is if that's what we communicate to the public, we intend to fulfill that commitment. We also like to review some unfunded projects because that gives us depth. So then when staff, as we're going throughout the year, we can start to identify and prioritize projects we may want to bring into future CIP documents. We're also making sure we link it with existing plans. And then, so that's kind of the project selection process. Once those projects are selected, we have to go through the authorization process, and that's where you have the 5-year plan, the adoption, to the comprehensive plan, and then our funding process with the budget. Okay, so this is the overall process, and this is where you see these public input stages. Now, this is where, Councilman, prior to your question on the sidewalk gaps, when we get calls 1,800, that goes into a service request, and we track those. An example being Southeast Douglas was a project that we'd received a lot of comments on, service requests, and so that's why it was presented. So yes, as you get those questions or comments, please forward that to us, because that really helps us making sure we're staying in line with the public intent and desire. So we welcome that communication, because it helps us know that we're on track with what we're doing. So this is kind of how we work through it, starting from the big picture at the top with the strategic plan, comp plan, that develops master plans like our sanitary sewer master plan, water master plan, our thoroughfare master plan, those greenway master plans. So those planning documents really help us, guide how we want to develop projects and programs. Then as we refine it even more, we get into the funding process. So, and then kind of where we're, so in this process, we added the April no tax increase bond issue project. So that was kind of an inject into this cycle that we know I have to factor in. And then where we're at now is the CIP kickoff. So you can kind of see where we're at. We're kind of, at this stage, we're kind of late in this annual process. But what we've been able to do is when we get these public comments, like for FY25, we'll be looking at that in FY26. I think an example of that would be Northeast Lakewood Way. We received a lot of comments on that project during this phase, this annual cycle of the process. Well, through that input, that kind of rose to the list on our no tax increase ballot language in April, and so that's how those projects were funded. So that really, again, that helps us. It may not be an immediate reaction, but it gets it in the pipeline so we can look at that. And I want to stress that, that getting that input really helps us. Because when Michael got the call, hey, I need a list of projects in a week, well, we had some idea where to go. I mean, we had a lot of good input on that. So how do we implement? We build projects, we prioritize. Projects are a discrete, distinct project. An example being our 3rd Street reconstruction, that is a project. Programs are focused more on maintaining our infrastructure, they're annual in nature, level of service. So that would be like our pavement management program. So that's the overlay program, our surface seal, curb replacement program. Water utilities has their water rehab program, cathodic protection. So those programs are more of an annual that help us maintain our, focus on maintaining our existing infrastructure. So again, I mentioned the comprehensive plan. So these are the essential elements of success, the different areas. And what we've done in the CIP is we've tried to identify how a project will align with these and support these. Again, it's just a way to present to the public that yes, we are supporting the overall vision and policy goals with the city. Same thing with the strategic plan. Now, and I'll illustrate this on one of the detail sheets later, again, that we're staying in line with these big picture policy guidance that we've received thus far. So again, we're an example going back and looking at 2017. These are transportation and stormwater related projects. This is how it was initially presented, showing the prioritization. And you can see how we have the factors that we looked at the project. We use this kind of a bubble chart to kind of show, open circle, partially aligned, solid circle being it's highly aligned with these items. And so this is that list of projects, and I'll kind of show some of the progress on that a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, so here we are, sales tax. This is the first iteration of our sequence of projects, and understanding that things change over time. I mean, we forecasted over 15 years. We broke it into the 5-year segments, and kind of looking back, we're in that 6 to 10 year window now. From being 2018, the first year we were working on these projects. So this is kind of the alignment of where it was, and you'll notice some of these projects like Douglas Street was pushed out in the 11 to 15 years. Well, that project is currently under design, so I'm not going to go through these one by one because this next image kind of shows where we're at now. The ones that are crossed out are things we've completed. We've completed the Colburn Road design because it's now under construction. The ones that are highlighted in yellow or amber are the ones that are currently underway, either in design or construction. So you've seen several of those between contracts and change orders tonight with the various phases. And if you'll notice, the Ward Road Phase 2 has been moved into the 6 to 10 year window, as well as Douglas Street. So some of the things have been moved forward. Some have been moved out to the 11 to 15 years, like the downtown parking garage. And part of this was done when we folded in the new bond issue projects from April of 23. So here we're looking at the April 23 bond issue projects. Now, the amber color indicates where we expect it to be in design, project development and design. Green is where we expect the actual construction or implementation of the project. And that hatched area is kind of that transition, how it plays out. And we've tried to show these in sequence so you can kind of see that the top group is focused more on the facilities that were included in the bond issue, and the ones down below, we're actually kind of showing a mixture of both the sales tax projects and the bond issue projects in this, to kind of show how these projects we expect those to be sequenced. And so this overall sequencing is what will show up in the CIP document as we prepare that. I think one of the things we commented on in our last discussion was the Douglas Street, 4th to Blue Parkway, how that was to be prioritized based on committee guidance. So that's where this is showing. And we're saying 24, these are showing calendar years. So FY21 begins July of 2024. So that's when we'd be looking at starting like the design on this phase. And actually, I'm looking at this is actually these are all backwards. The green should be amber and the amber should be green. So my apologies on that one. Okay, comp plan. I'll just touch on this briefly, but things we've talked about in the comp plan, or the comprehensive plan: transit, facilities, our fire station projects, our joint operations facilities, sidewalk gaps. So those are some of the things that are highlighted. Factors we look at when we look at our funding commitments. Obviously, we look on the left are kind of the factors we look at, on the project, but the other part, like cash flow, is a big one. That's a big guidance directive we've had from council at this point. So we're not using the sales tax revenue to kind of create a revenue bond, phasing or sequencing. And actually that helps us as staff because it just helps us manage the workload and workforce. And when we have a bond issue, then we have that's a conversation specific to that of how we sequence those projects. So in the capital improvement plan, you see a detail sheet that looks like this. And so basically what this will do is it'll identify the type of project it is. This is accounting information here. It just helps us as staff know, that we're using the right funds when we charge this. This is the project description, so this is generally what is kind of on the public-facing side of our website. Then we look at the project purpose, so we have to tie it to a public purpose in alignment with plans. We show our estimated schedule and our funding sources, the current, our most recent estimate on the budget, and down here we're folding in the alignment with the strategic plan and the comp plan. Generally, the strategic plan, when we look at this, we're looking at the current condition. How does it, what are we supporting now, the immediate, and the comp plan, we're kind of looking how are we improving and looking out 10 years or so and how it supports that plan. That's just kind of a way that we kind of differentiate the two when we're putting together these bubble charts. Again, this is just an illustration of funds. Some projects have more than one fund involved in it. We have different sources, so that's why sometimes there's overlap, and some are, we're limited to only like one fund, like you'll see over here on our transit program and our maintenance. It only comes out of this permanent transportation sales tax. It does not draw on our CIP sales tax. But you'll see some augmentation, like when we look at our CURB program, there was some money in the sales tax for that. There's some augmentation there. At the beginning, I talked about the process and just the idea of this, the long-term, long view on this, how it helps. And examples I use for this is when we look at Todd, George, and Scruggs, that was first envisioned in 1968. They were constructed between 1999 and 2007. But because of that, we had that alignment study for that corridor. As development went into the area, developers were able to dedicate right-of-way for those projects. So that meant when the city was coming for those roads, we did not have to purchase right-of-way. Ward Road, the 4-lane, widening that out to a 4-lane divided, that was done in several phases. Again, that was related to our master plan. And then when we're looking at the 291 South corridor, that's that area just south of the interchange, the Odessa Auto Auction area and that. So there's some area there where, we know we have a development plan, master plan for that, but so our capital improvement plan is kind of supporting that, removing some of those impediments like the improvements along Jefferson Street, the 291 interchange. So that's another example where when we have that long-term plan, it really helps with that. And then also we're looking at, future growth, as the city grows, how do we grow and expand our infrastructure? So last year, this is our list of unfunded projects. The ones that are lined out are ones that have been funded. And all of these have been funded through the April bond issue election. And then, again, these are things that will, the traffic signals, every year our traffic division is looking at intersections, and if they meet warrants, then we start the process to program that in as a traffic signal. Because that's one of the safety considerations we look at in these projects. And again, we want to make sure those are tied to appropriate traffic warrants. Okay, so the next steps in the process, obviously we have our meeting here in January. After this, so when we get the green light, staff starts meeting next week to put this whole thing together. We have almost every department in the city is involved in this in some shape or form. And then we get it, so then we'll come together, make sure we get the projects coordinated, because when we have a road project, that impacts water utilities. It may impact parks. If Parks is looking to coordinate or sync up with the project, and that kind of gets to what we were talking about in the sidewalk gap program. We know that like on Pryor Road, that is a capital project, but we know as part of that, we need to put sidewalks in that. Same thing with the Ward Road projects we were talking about earlier. That'll be included on the Southeast Douglas as part of that. It'll include stormwater as well as sidewalks, because we know that's an area that receives a lot of pedestrian traffic. So then when we come back in April, we'll have our draft CIP at that point in time. That's when we will look at publishing it for public comment. Then we'll get on the calendar with Planning Commission for the resolution to have the public hearing, because all projects by state law require a public hearing. And then when we look at, then we'll have the resolution amending the comp plan, and then we start, bringing that to council. Typically, we do that as a staff report. Here is the CIP, the final, version, to give you time to look through and review it. And then when we come back, there'll be a time if there's questions or comments related to that. And then we have and then the final step is the budget for adopting it for the next fiscal year. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Councilmember Lovell.
So just looking at, so I was trying to look at I think it's slide CIP sales tax prioritized list. And then why I'm going back to that was I was looking at the April 2023 NTIB projects. And what is NTIB?
No tax increase bond.
Okay, bond projects, right? And then I look at all the infrastructure, and then real quick, so facilities conceptual calendar, and then there's BS and S conceptual calendar. So BS and S is
Bridge Street and Signal.
Bridge Street and Signal. Well, I guess what I'm getting at here is I see critical roads and infrastructure for our city getting pushed back quite a ways, and then some of these other prioritized items moving forward faster. And then I guess what I'm trying to determine is like, are we doing this right? Like, should our focus be more on those items that seem to me just, again, not knowing? So then I have to go, I'm going back up to that slide over there to say, like, how are you guys prioritizing these things? I'm sure if you had your druthers, you want all the roads and infrastructure done faster and things like that. I just, as we think about the bond initiative, I'm trying to say, like, is the best use of the bond initiative, especially in today's environment, like, is it, like, how do we prioritize those over critical roads, infrastructure, stormwater, things like that, that I think, in my mind, if I was a taxpayer, would be more important to me if it wasn't a public safety problem or anything like that. So I don't know if I have a question in all of that. I'm just trying to wrap my head around about, like, are we pushing things out too far in areas that should be more important?
I can share our thought process on that.
Yeah.
And I think I could also help maybe explain a little bit that might answer your question a little bit. So you're saying, are we pushing some of our 2017 sales tax projects, which were priorities that were approved by voters, out for a no tax increase bond project that was more recently approved? Is that what you're saying?
No, because I think I'm probably not, I'm not actually thinking of the 2017 CIP, which I probably should. So there's money that was put aside for those projects. I guess what I'm more focused on is what we put together for the bonds.
Yeah.
And then, like, saying, like, I know we went through a long, arduous process of kind of identifying critical areas that everybody kind of had a bucket to pull from. I just want to make sure that, you know, we've got our eye on the ball in the right places, right? And so I see, like, the bond initiative stuff maybe being pushed out for some of this. That's what I was.
So some of the bond projects are definitely being pushed out. We don't have the staff resources, or really I don't think it would be, and talking with our finance department, wise to issue all debt right now and start all of these. So we decided, in working with Public Works Committee, we visited a couple months ago to talk about this sequencing, make sure we were kind of headed down the right path of which projects in that bond issue should come before the other projects. And some of them, I'll give explanation like Shear. We thought Shear needs to start earlier because it's got a very long time to deliver. You know, that's a 5+ year project to deliver, as opposed to a Douglas Street, which has a fairly short turnaround to deliver.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, if it's short turnaround, but it's also part of downtown and our initiative to improve all of our gateways, we put an emphasis to get that done sooner. And so that pushed some of the other ones, like a Lakewood Way, out a little bit further. But all of the projects, I think what you're seeing here, will show up in this 5-year CIP. But some of them won't start design this year. Some of them will start design in year 3 or year 4. And I think that's just a matter of, if you feel we need to rearrange these, we need to arrange them. That's why we need to have this discussion.
Which I think we'll probably get the opportunity tomorrow night when we see some of this stuff too. So, like, you know, just thinking, like, joint operations facility building is a very expensive project, right? And I'm not saying we don't need it. I'm saying, like, how do we, should we be prioritizing that over some of these critical roads and infrastructure things that we have before us too? So I think that's just kind of, I was trying to get, I'm sure you guys all get in a room and try to identify.
Yeah, so I would also refer us to review the presentation we made at Public Works Committee, where we considered how we did this.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot more than just these projects and their scope and delivery timelines, but also all of those other commitments, like the 2017 projects. A lot of them are underway, and then we have a maximum capacity that we can deliver.
Gotcha.
And those
so
are
it's like we can't really even go on this next one here, so maybe we're better off starting these now because we need a little bit of lag over here for there.
Yeah, and then it's because the facility projects are being managed, you know, not by a roadway project manager, but by a facilities project manager. So Ms. Bloom has a capacity to handle some of these facility projects concurrently with only a few of the road projects, as opposed to doing all the road projects and deferring facilities projects.
Gotcha.
But it's
that's
very
that's helpful, and I think that, like, especially getting that on the public record as we have our constituents asking us things that we're doing, is like why we might be doing that, because, by the way, we don't have the bandwidth to start some of these, but the money's still there when we're ready to go do it. So why don't we start here with some things we can get moving forward?
Really good question, and that's where, as staff, we rely on council to help with knowledge of those priorities and those influences of limited resources on a pure staffing level. what should come first.
So
and
if
what
I
should
get
come
the
second.
question like, well, why are we building that? And we've got all these. I was like, well, we've got a lot of projects we're doing there. We don't have the bandwidth to keep doing those projects. So we have this here. We're going to do that. Maybe that's why we're starting this here. And I think it's just,
Exactly
again,
right.
just kind of getting that fleshed out and having that conversation is good.
Say
So-
like, we got one project manager who's doing 3 of these road projects, can't take on a 4th, and you've got a facilities project manager who has no projects. Why not start one of those right now?
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that helps. It helps me understand it better, and I think it'll be great conversation tomorrow when we're going through some of this stuff too. So, thank you.
If I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Tyler, because when we were developing this concept, I'm gonna get the right, I want to say troop to task, but person to project, identified a person for every project, and that's how we kind of came up with this, including previous commitments. The other advantage on the facilities projects, they can get started faster because we already own the land. It's fairly well defined as the scope. If it's a Fire Station 1 remodel, we know where it is. And so we can get started that on right away. When we start talking about road projects, well, the first thing we do, we got to go out and survey.
What do you mean? That's a piece of cake, as we've seen in the past. I mean, everybody's always willing to give us.
Right. So that's part, like,
Right.
the substation, police substation. I mean, that's a very easy project to get started.
Right.
So that's part of it, is kind of catch some of that low-hanging fruit, because then that does show progress that we are moving forward with the bond issues that were approved. And so in the meantime, in the background, we'll start filtering in some of the design for these longer projects.
Great. Well, that was very helpful. I don't know if anybody else was thinking any of this stuff, but I have been getting questions about how we're going to use the bond money and why we're prioritizing certain things. So I think that helps. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Member Edson, you still with us?
Yep. No, I have no questions, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Well, I don't have any more questions either. Do we, this is just a discussion presentation, right? We don't have to wait for the timeline as George had the timeline up there.
Correct. And as we do throughout the year, if you've got project interests or constituents who have interests, send them on to Public Works. Like, I know we have a large number of people who are very much interested in a new traffic signal installation. It will be recommended at 3rd and Bridlewood or Peel. That's part of it, and I'm sure you have probably received correspondence from some of your constituents asking for that. So we are listening. That's one of them that we'll be trying to find funds and recommending come forward. But if there's other projects we need to be reviewing, now is the time to bring those to our attention.
And speaking of that, the Todd George and Chipman Road, that I didn't specifically look for that one, but that one is 25, right?
That one is already in the capital improvement plan. It is funded with FY24 funds, and our staff has already ordered a survey and will begin design work soon.
I think it's actually getting worse. I don't know why there's an increase in traffic all of a sudden, but I walk that's in my walking route, and I see a lot of near misses. I like to walk fast through there because
What's fast to you?
3.5 miles an hour.
I was just going to, Ms. Springer, I just want I just compliment you on your presentations. They're always very thorough and very helpful. I think you do a great job, so I really appreciate the time and energy you put into these.
Thank you.
I ditto that. I was going to say the same thing. It's very comprehensive and very, very easy to follow, and for those watching, we're continually moving forward and improving. So, yeah, but I agree. If the public does have comments, we love to hear them. So that leads us into, thank you, George, appreciate it. That leads us into roundtable. Any roundtable from the council?
May I?
Yes,
Chair?
absolutely.
So one of the things I've just kind of been thinking on in the couple years that I've been here, and Councilmember, Chair DeMoro and I were having a conversation just how, in procurement and then contracts and then adjustments to those. I was just curious, do we ever, I know that there are so many unknowns, especially in public works, like for instance, the ditch that we were going through there and, running into rock and what we can do. But I'm just curious, in general, was this a good year for procurement, and did we have fewer change orders, or do we ever measure those things when we're going out so that we have the opportunity the next year to be like, hey, we need to change something here because this is going to help us in the future, not miss those in the past. I just was curious, like, is it a good year to a bad year? What can we do to improve? I'm sure you're doing those things, but just.
We do, and we can ask Mr. Allen to show up and give kind of a year summary of our change order status. I know that we typically perform very well when you look at all the totality of our projects and the percentage of change orders. Usually it's less than 2%, which is very good. You know, kind of an industry goal is to keep it under 5% of change order total cost of construction. Unless Mr. Binger's got a number readily available on what our.
I bet he does.
Last year, maybe he does.
We look, every year, we look at our change order total, and we look at its change order based on the base contract value. And last year, we were at 1.3 increase. Now, we don't count, a change in scope. So let's say if we have a project and we want to add another 500 feet to it, we don't count that. But then to your other point, we constantly change our contract document. Every time we learn something on our project, gee, we missed it on this project, we go back with our construction staff and we make sure we include that in our contract documents.
And I think it was really refreshing too to hear in the sidewalks how you're learning as you go there, hey, we need to adjust for this. These are things that we couldn't see. So I like to just hear that in the public kind of sphere here because I think it's important for people to know like that you guys are being good stewards and we are constantly aiming to improve and we see these changes coming through all the time. People are like, gosh, it feels like it's like. So again, I get feedback a lot from people and I'm like, well, you know what? I'll just ask. Like this seems like, and you guys do a great job and I appreciate all you do and thanks for sharing.
I feel the same way until I look at the year-end number. So.
Thank you. The only item I have is the next Public Works meeting will be February 12th, 2024. Any roundtable from staff?
Yeah, a few things I'll bring to your attention. So you're aware we've been sending out messages on the roadway collapse for Quarry Park Road. We've executed a contract to improve the detour route. Weather permitting, they'll begin work, and we also need to strike agreement with the property owner to allow that work to occur. But we'll bring that agreement for work as well as a budget amendment straight to City Council. We're currently targeting the January 23rd meeting, which is the next regular session that's available, as opposed to bringing it to committee. So I just want to bring that to your attention. But yeah, it was, if you haven't been following, we had a roadway collapse of Quarry Park Road. This is on the north side of I-470, west of Pryor Road. Fortunately, it does only serve a very few number of properties. But nonetheless, we had to find a different route to route those property owners out to Bannister to the north as opposed to Pryor Road. And we think actually this is probably a better route long-term once we get it improved and may serve as a long-term route as opposed to Quarry Park Road. But we're working on that. There's also a public meeting a week from Thursday. That'll be January 18th from 4 to 6 p.m. in this room for the Douglas Street improvements, that's 2nd Street to Chipman, as well as the Olive and Orchard improvements. That's Orchard Street from Douglas west to Olive, and then Olive north to Chipman. So a combination of those two projects, we'll be holding a public meeting, share the plans, invite anybody to come by, take a look at the plans, see what the scope of work includes. Essentially, we're rebuilding those roads much like we are doing to 3rd Street and adding sidewalks and shared use paths and improving the stormwater infrastructure and street lights and those sort of improvements. But again, that's a week from Thursday, January 18th, 4 to 6 p.m. in this room. And then lastly, everybody I think has taken a look outdoors, our first weather storm of 2024, really the first one of the winter. Just encourage everybody to stay home if you can stay home and stay off the streets. Don't park on the streets, allow us to do our job as best we can. And if you do need to get out and drive, just be safe because it'll be slick and we all forget from season to season. And I don't think we've had a snowstorm this large, at least forecast this large in a few years. So be careful. That's all I have.
Which truck names will be out there fighting this storm?
So all 10 truck names will be out there. We haven't yet got all of them, but some of them have been labeled. If you'll see on the doors of our dump trucks with snow plows, you can see Tater Tot and a number of them that are out there working. All of them are also labeled on the city's snow tracker. So if you go online and you want to see which routes were plowed by Plow Source Rex, you can.
Did we ever get any geotechnical information on Quarry Road?
We've hired a engineering consultant, one of our on-call consultants, to perform an investigative analysis on the conditions that are out there. Not yet caused, we'll be working on that separately. But to determine what is the best course of action moving forward, whether to mitigate, the collapse and repair Quarry Park Road or to create a more permanent fix on the alternate route.
Any other comments? Roundtable, by anyone? Okay, then I will adjourn this meeting at 5:58 p.m. Thank you all.